One of the letters recalls that you were at the Majestic Theater with your friend Joe Cantu, and you met two young women named Alicia and Gloria. Can you tell us about the first time you saw Gloria, the woman that would eventually become your lovely wife?
I'll never forget that. At the time, you have to realize that all the theaters that were downtown were interstate theaters, and they were the best. Queen, Grande, Majestic, Capitol. They were beautiful theaters, and it was a Sunday. Joe Cantu and I, we had gone to the Majestic, and we sat down there almost in the back. And there was this couple of girls right in front, and like any young guy, I guess, we started throwing popcorn across and hitting them in the head, just throwing popcorn, and so I mean it might have been annoying to Gloria, but and finally she turned around, and when she turned around, the door opened. On the aisle door entering to the theater, and there was light. And when you turn around, I saw her eyes. And that was the first thing I saw was her eyes, and I fell in love with her. Later, well, she went out, and I lost her. I didn't see her for a while. And I thought I was never going to see her again. But I was lucky to have, later on, I saw her. But it took a while. It was another friend that was able to introduce Gloria to me. And then we started becoming friends.
What motivated you to join the armed forces?
At that time, it was a draft. See, I didn't volunteer. At that time, we had the draft. And I think it was a good thing for the draft to continue, but I discontinued. And of course, I had to go. I had to serve my country.
In one of your first letters in April of 1960, you write that you cry because you are separated from your love. You mention that many of your friends were also hurting. You explain that sharing pictures from home helped. Was this a common practice among soldiers in places you were stationed at? Were many of the soldiers open to talking about home and sharing stories and pictures of their loved ones?
This is the way that it was. Having friends that live with you and eat with you and fight, get content again and share stories about home and life and wives and girlfriends, whatever. This is what more or less what he says. He says, you have to understand that I didn't have a chance to say goodbye to my squad members and friends that had been with you in good times and in bad times, friends that shared everything such as their homes, loved ones, breakups, Dear John letters, friends that were with you and raised hell, and yet we learn to take care of one another. We become actually like a band of brothers,
One of the early passages reads that every letter you get from Gloria makes you sad, and that you will now have to make up your mind to adjust to military life. Was your adjustment into the military a difficult one? And how did Gloria help with this new lifestyle change?
Well, it was kind of difficult. This is at the early stages of my military service. Yes, it's hard to be separated, especially because you're in a different lifestyle, and you have to do whatever you're asked to do, and it's very, very difficult to get adjusted to military life. But then again, I realized that if I try to adjust military life, then it would be better for me, because I would be doing a better job, and they wouldn't be after me, and so that's the way it was. Now on Gloria, it must have been a little more difficult, because by that time we had gotten married, and she had to go to a different atmosphere in another home, my parents' home. And she was just a stranger there with strange people. My my parents was a little older, and Gloria was young. And I think that she came to to my mom and dad's house at the right time, because being young, she became like a spark of energy in that house. And I think that Gloria had found something there that she might never had. Like, I really think that my parents loved Gloria like my grandchild, because they would pamper her in many different ways. And but I think that Gloria found like an adopted grandpa and a grandma. And I think that later on they became very good friends, and they would talk. My mom and her would talk. Yeah. And actually, I think that my mother had something in common, because she got married when she was about 17 or 18. And Gloria did the same thing. So that they had that in common. I'll tell you what, it was the letters. The letters actually kept me going every day, day to day, day to day, day to day. And I had to try and put a note day to day to her also when I could. I carried a pad inside my field jacket, and wherever I went, whatever chance I had, I would write a note. And when I see the mail clerk coming, I would give him the letter, and it would go, But the letters kept us real close.
Ms. Coronado, as your husband just mentioned, that he would write to you every day, and would you write to him every day? And how was it for you when there was days that the mail did not have mail for you? How did you feel about that?
When he came back, he would bring me 2 or 3 letters.
He would make up for that.
Yes, and I would fight with him. You didn't bring me mail. I don't have any mail for you. He said, and well, maybe tomorrow, but that's all I leave for, the letters. So.
In one of the wedding pictures, you express that it is a great moment of happiness, but a great moment of desperation. Just thinking that you are going to be apart for a long, long time. Shortly after your wedding, you left back to Fort Hood to continue your training. Can you recall those last moments you got to spend with your new wife, and the feeling you felt knowing it would be several months before you would see her again?
It was like, something terrible, something that you have to go through in order to understand. The darkness of the night, that's when I left. And that's where we said goodbye. We kissed good night. And they were waiting for me. There was a station wagon loaded with some other guys that were going back to Fort Hood. And of course, I knew that she was crying. As I was walking toward the station wagon, I know she was crying. And I wanted to turn back, and I wanted to go out there and wipe her tears. But no. And so I knew I was going to be separated. It was kind of hard. It was kind of difficult. And but as soon as I got there, I wrote her a letter, and we started communicating with one another again. But it was very difficult.
Can you recall those last moments you got to spend with your husband, and the feeling you felt knowing it would be several months before you would see him again?
I wanted to die. It was very hard for me to stay, and I thought I was not going to see him again.
In January of 1961, your letter to your wife mentions that you spent a very lonely Christmas and New Year's because of being so far apart from one another. You end the letter with a statement, "You are always in my mind and in my heart." With the correspondence between you and your wife ease some of the loneliness and homesickness that you were feeling being so far away from one another.
Dearest darling, today is Thursday, Honey, we both spent a lonely Christmas and a New Year because we are so far apart from each other. But the important thing is that we love each other. Honey, my company moved out early this morning and they will come back till around midnight. All this time they're walking. However, I did not go because I had to stay back and take care of the alert room. The alert room is a weapons room, and I was in charge of that also, besides the radio. This is my other job besides the radio. God has been good to us. Thanks for your prayers. This letter, on this letter, I ran out of ink and started to write on it with a pencil. Darling, I'll say goodbye for now, but you are with me wherever I go and do, and even when I go to sleep, you are always in my mind and in my heart. Love you, sweetheart, your husband Pablo. And that's why I wanted to read that. Yeah.
July of 1961, you write that you and your sergeant were almost electrocuted and died. What was your wife's reaction to reading about this incident?
I didn't tell her. In my letters, no, I wouldn't say anything like that to her. That came out after I started writing. The Sergeant Hyde did not die. He was electrocuted, but he did not die. And it was an accident provoked by one of the executive officers. You know, sometimes they think that they know the world because they're officers. And so she was trying to show me how to put an antenna on top of a power line that carries millions of volts of electricity. We were staying in this under this orchard of apples. If you love apples, ahí estaba, puros apples everywhere. And I was told by my sergeant to go ahead and put the antenna to communicate with the main company. We had just crossed a river called the Mine River. And we were staying there, laying there, because we had been walking all day. And I had taken off my radio and I was relaxed and everything. They were calling me and I would answer, but they wouldn't hear me because they were too far away. And so finally the exec officer came over and he bawled me out because I was not answering the phone. I said, "Sir, I answer the phone, I can hear you, but I cannot transmit because you're too far away." And he said, "No, it's because your antenna is not high enough." I said, I didn't say nothing, but I told my sergeant, the antenna is just a reception. It's not a transmitter. And so he tried to pick up the antenna way up there and show me that it was a very stupid thing to do. And it was an ignorant stuff to do. Because there was spliced telephone wire all over the place. And we were watching what the clown was doing. He was trying to show me how to throw a rock across with a wire and hoist the antenna up there. But the antenna fell, and it fell between two power lines, and it started arcing. But the antenna had a wire connected, and my sergeant was stepping on the wire. Besides me, we were just a foot apart. And nobody, I didn't know that he was under electrocution until my antenna broke and melted and broke. Then my Sergeant Hyde, actually jumped out of the ground about 2 or 3 feet and fell. And it was scary. And from there, we took him under an apple tree, and he was limp and pale. And we stayed there till about, I don't know, a good 4 or 5 hours under that tree. The medic came and he put some medication in his feet and all that stuff, but he managed to be okay. But it was scary. And of course, the ex-officer stayed with us for a while. And at the very end, he left. At the end of the day, He said, what do you all need tomorrow? I said, get me a new antenna.
You state that it was hard for you and your wife to get acquainted once you were out of the military and back home. You say that it was harder for you. How long did it take for you and your wife to adjust to your new lives together after being separated for so long?
I'll tell you what, it was hard. At least we spent about 2 months, but I was never the same, right? After I came back, I was never the same person. Gloria tells me all the time, you know, that my face would change and everything. I'm gonna see a little piece here that I have written a note. I think it's, bear with me just a bit. It was very strange coming home. It seems as if time stood still, except for us being apart for so long. I felt different and strange besides my wife. I had already seen her. It was a good homecoming. My face was different. And it was hard to smile. I had been conditioned to be different. That's what the Army does. They condition you to be different, a different type of person. I prayed God and kept thinking that my wife would take all these bad feelings away. You know? And then he says, coming home actually was different. I had promised my wife in so many letters that everything was going to be forgotten, you know, and erased from my mind. But then again, it says here that that I cannot forget my friends I left behind. And he said these friends never asked for anything. And I thought about my friend Navarro. Navarro was a friend that I had from Michigan, and who died on his way to the showers. We had, when you read the book, you're going to notice that we had stayed at this place where it was so cold. We were sleeping on top of the ice. We had built pup tents on top of the ice because there was no other way. And we had been there about 7 days. We hadn't taken a shower or anything like that. Finally, the engineers came and they opened up a shower tent with warm water about 3 miles away. And at that time they had called me. I said, look, Coronado, you and the other guys, you better just get ready because you're going to go home. So pick up your field equipment and go. Navarro came and he was gathering soldiers to take him to the showers. And he said, Coronado, you want to go? He said, no, Lige, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. And I want to go to my barracks, which were about 50 miles away. And he said, Hombre, you have a seat right there, especially for you. I'm 23 and you're going to be 24. On the seating arrangements on the truck, you have 24 people. And there was number 23 and 24. And I was going to climb the truck. And then I said, no, but Navarro, you better go. I'm not going. And he said, I have 30 more days to go. And then from there, it was around 10 o'clock. We went back 50 miles away to our main barracks. I never saw Navarro again. When I got to the barracks, the sergeant in charge of the main barracks told me that a truck had overturned and Navarro had gotten killed. And I thought, oh my God, I was going to sit with Navarro right next to him. And I didn't. And so it says here, because I thought of my friend Navarro, who had died on his way to the showers, a trip in which I was supposed to have been on. And then he says here that I asked forgiveness to God for not being with him on that unforgettable trip.
Of the numerous letters you wrote to your wife, which is the most memorable and why?
The letters that I wrote to my wife, I have to say all of them. There was not a single letter that was not memorable. All the letters kept us together. It was one of those things that one letter is all letters, and so I just couldn't say this was the most memorable. They were really all together. Yes.
What motivated and influenced you to share such touching and personal letters with the public through the publishing of this book?
Well, the book was intended for my 6 children, and this is the way it was supposed to be. And so when I wrote the book, which took me about 2.5 years, I put it all together. When I had all this information done, I wanted to make 6 copies of my manuscripts, one for each child. Ya tan grandes ya, ¿verdad? But I wanted to give them that. So when I went to Sarah Publishing, and I asked the guys there, I said, look, I want 6 copies of this. So I started looking all this information. They said, Mr. Coronado, if you have information here to write a book, have you ever thought about that? I said, no. So, they said, well, it's a good idea if you put it into a book. I said, well, how much is it going to cost me? He says, well, you don't have to worry about that. We'll make a contract, and we get the book together, and we edited the book, and then once the book starts selling, then we can collect our money. I said, okay. So that's why it got started. But like I say, it was not intentional to the public. And if you read the book, it's got a lot of mistakes, but I wanted to leave them there. And it tells you right in the front that the book it has all these mistakes and all this, because partes tiene mexicanas, I wrote sometimes in Spanish to my wife, and it says there. So I tried to put sweetheart, translated in Spanish, and it's yeah, it's a mi reinita, my little queen, mi reina, my queen, mi reina chula, my lovely queen, preciosa, precious, te quiero mucho, love you very much. Vamos a tener, we're going to have muchachitos, small children. Te adoro, I adore you, mi vida, my love, linda, lovely, con todo el corazón, with all my heart. Verdad, because I use the word verdad in a lot of my letters. It says really or to agree with. But paragraphing was something that was never thought of being perfect. The important thing was to write a note and fill with love and so on and so forth.
Do you have any advice to servicemen and women that are proudly serving abroad away from their loved ones?
Yes, I do. I say to each one of them that to take care of one another while in the service. Since they live in squads, they are together as companies and dormitories and things like that. But they need to talk to one another. They need to express their feelings and discuss their loved ones and stuff like that. And they have to have faith, and they have to have a lot of hope, and they have to have a lot of trust toward one another, and never let anybody down. Always try to help each one in any need whatsoever, whether it's money or whether it's anything. And when they get out, make sure that they continue to have this communication between one another, because in time These are the best friends that they will ever have for as long as they live.